All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. I'm Charlie McGrath, your host, and I'm all alone. I'm all alone in this big world. Listen, I don't know what happened with Michael Snyder of the Economic Collapse blog, but I can tell you this: there's not a more reliable person that I've ever met in my life. So I'm hoping everything is okay. We had communicated with him today, and he was all set, ready to come on. So hopefully everything's cool. Hopefully it's just there. He lives. And you know what? I just thought of this, Gary and Karen, because I know you're both listening. He lives west of me. I'm in Bose, Montana. You guys know that. He lives west of me towards Seattle area, but there's a massive storm rolling this way, so there's a really, really good chance that. Okay, I'm getting a message here. Okay, so Gary, are you here? Are you on here with me? Jump on here for a sec because I'm kind of confused.
You know I'm here.
All right. I see the message error about Brett taking care of Michael.
That was erroneous information. You had called him since then.
Okay, yeah. We frantically during the break tried to get a hold of Michael, and it just dawned on me, Gary, that we've got this massive storm rolling this way, as Christina and I talked about last night. So that's probably what happened. He's probably without power right now. So here's what we're going to do. Get on the phone, 877-342-6673. Call in, talk to me, talk to Gary, talk to whoever else happens to call in. We can have up to a couple different people. I want to hear about your guys' reaction to not necessarily the election as much as what happens now. Where do we go from here? Because let me tell you, and I alluded to it a little bit with Aaron, I was really, really surprised at the velocity of things melting down. And I was talking to Dex today in the Black Ops training room, and we were in there watching at the start of the open of the markets, where it opened at 50 points down, and then it dropped to 60, 70, 100, 200. And then automatically, almost as on cue, Draghi, the head of the European Central Bank, comes out and announces that Germany's economic outlook, instead of being a 1.8% growth, is going to fall to a 0.01% growth, sparking even more sell-off, more panic. Then RT contacts me because the parliament in Greece is about to vote on more austerity. And so all of this stuff is hitting it in one shot. All of it's hitting it one time. And it is just happening very, very quickly. I figured we would have this afterglow period of time, and we'd roll into the beginning of the year.
Oh, you were looking for a honeymoon, huh?
Yeah, honeymoon period.
Oh, ye of little faith. Actually, if anything, I think speed's going to start picking up. What does Warren refers to it as what? Velocity?
Yeah, well, yeah, the velocity is picking up, and it happened, on this very day. The 300 points down on the Dow. Okay, that wasn't because Obama was elected. That was Obama plus what's going on in Europe, what came out of Draghi's mouth today. But Gary, we're looking at our own fiscal cliff here very, very soon. And I think what's coming is going to be our own realization that we are no better than Greece. In fact, bear with me here. I'm going to grab this report because it shows exactly where we're at. Hold on. It shows that we are not only not any better than Greece as far as debt loads, we're worse. In fact, U.S. Per person debt is 35% higher than that of Greece. In Greece right now, as we're doing this program tonight, Molotov cocktails are being thrown, water cannons are being implemented, people are being arrested. People are probably dying in the streets of Greece. They're sitting there with $39,384 per person in debt. If you put the debt on the backs of the people of Greece, which they're doing, that's how much each one of them owes. In Italy, which is far, far greater size than Greece, far, far bigger economy than Greece, it's $41,645. In France, it's slightly under Greece at 37,104. But in the United States, again, this goes back to what Aaron and I were talking about, which is this petrodollar and this advantage that it gives us for having the petrodollar as our currency, also the world reserve currency. In the United States, it's $53,378 per person, for man, woman, and child in this country. That is our debt load. So, Gary, it's not a matter of if; it's just a matter of when the reality sets home that our own sovereign debt crisis is at hand, and when that occurs, I think we're going to see exactly what we see happening in Greece right now and in Europe. I didn't think we would see this kind of carnage. Like I said, I thought we'd have a little bit of a honeymoon and a little bit of an afterglow period, but it doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah, but see, we've got an advantage over the Greeks. We got printing presses that just never run out of paper. And, if they want this thing to keep rolling for another decade, it'll roll for another decade. But, I have a funny feeling that Obama's mission in life is probably going to be, that's one nice thing about getting Obama in there. Now, frankly, I didn't care whether Robamna or whatever. I didn't care which one of them got it because I knew it'd be, same play no matter what. But one nice thing about Obama is I think he will probably move it a little faster towards, the ultimate goal than Romney would have. I think Romney would have, held it back a little bit. Still headed in the same direction, but might have been a little slower. So, let's just get it over with. Whatever.
Well,
by the way, don't. I hope you noticed the message there. We do have a caller.
Oh, we do. Okay, I'm not. Go ahead, announce our caller, Gary, because I'm not. I'm looking at Karen's. I'm looking at Michael Snyder's.
I know you got messages coming all over the place. Richard from Washington. If we didn't already piss the poor fellow off by ignoring him so long, Brett, maybe you go ahead and bring that caller on.
Richard, are you there?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Hey man, thanks for the call.
I don't know if I am on.
You are on.
Because I'm getting feedback.
You sound crystal clear on this end, buddy.
Oh, okay. Well, yesterday I was part of the show, and Eric was there, and Eric made a statement, and I wanted to make one more statement, but my internet went down, and the phones went off, and I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I was wondering what happened to you there. Go ahead.
Yeah, it just happened. But basically, Eric is right on as far as the fiefdom's concerned, but I wanted to point out one thing that's really unique in our situation. In the past, all these structures had a head. You had the king, you could chop off his head, or you had somebody that you could focus on. But in modern times, with the corporate structure, you have at the top boards of directors that you really don't know who that is. But even above that is the hidden hand. If you read Carroll Quigley and works such as his, you get the impression that these powers that be that are actually pulling the string go work overtime to keep behind the scenes, so that you never know who to focus your anger at or try to make corrections with or whatever, because you can never approach them. Things just happen that seem to be out of the blue and without any control or input from you. And then what happens is the mid-managers, as Eric was talking about, they end up fighting amongst themselves and fighting with you, and it's another divide and conquer at a lower level that never allows you to go past where the decisions are actually being made. And that's what I think is truly unique in our situation in the present, is that all this political theater takes place with no ability on our part to actually, quote unquote, send telegrams to the people that are pulling the string.
Yeah, and they're insulated almost. They're not almost. They completely are insulated. So it really doesn't matter. And it goes to it really doesn't matter who won last night, who's president today, because the people that are running the show, pulling the strings, Oz, they are untouchable, and they're going to continue to implement this this agenda until it's complete. And I think I hear the music playing, but I greatly appreciate the call. Appreciate you holding and sharing that point with us again tonight. But the agenda is unfolding. They're going to govern by crisis through these mid-level folks. You're 100% right. All right, guys, hang tight. We're going to be back with more Wide Awake News Radio in just a few minutes. All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. I'm your host, Charlie Charlie McGrath. Joining us now is we still have Gary. He's in the back doing his little magic tricks, and we have Freeman Burt from a city I'm heading to this weekend from Denver. He agreed to jump on real quick and join me and have a conversation. We're going to start it off a little bit about I want to get his take on the election and where we go from here. Burt, thanks very much for joining me on short notice. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Happy to join in.
Happy to have you. All right. Well, I don't know if you were listening in the first hour. We had Aaron Hawkins of Storm Clouds Gathering, and Gary and I were just talking about the, I kind of misled you because I don't want to talk about the election. I really don't care who came out in this selection process of who was put before us. I'm very, very concerned about the speed that I think things are going to start to come apart. And I'm talking economically, I'm talking militarily, I'm talking freedom evaporating with new legislation. I mean, we are going to enter into the next few months, and there's going to be one crisis after another, and every single one of them is going to be leading to a loss of freedom and an implementation of more control over the people of this country and the world. And I think that, a lot of the times that people in alternative media have been warning about is at hand. What is your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's definitely, everything's moving towards something. And the reason that it has to move toward something, and the something is not anything good, is because of the financial situation in the world. I mean, all currencies have been basically stretched out to their max. So now they have to gain more collateral to back up the stretched fake currency that's being spread out all over the world. So something has to give, and obviously they're not going to give, so the give has to come from us. We have to give more. We have not given enough, so we have to give more. And that's why it really doesn't matter who the president is, because it's about as relevant as who's the next president of Walmart or McDonald's. It makes no difference in your life who the president is. When people finally begin to get a grip on that, they'll start putting their energy into something that really matters. If people really want to concentrate their effort on an election that can actually make a difference in your life, that is your sheriff. That is the one office that you can actually vote that can actually do something for you. Because the sheriff can actually prevent the banks from foreclosing on you. He can prevent all the scams from the federal government. He's the only one that can do anything for you. City council and all those type of people, they can't do anything for you. But the sheriff can. And you need to vote him in as a sheriff of the people, not as an arm of the state.
Well, to that point, and I'm trying to remember now if it was a sheriff's department. I think it was sheriff's department right there outside of Denver. I don't know if you caught that video of a lady who was being evicted. Made it onto YouTube. I did a video talking about it the other night. I'm trying to give you the exact location because it's relevant to you where you're at. But it was armed agents. These are enforcement agents for the bank who kicked this lady off of her land because she was delinquent on her mortgage. But they showed up, 6 or 8 of these guys, in full battle dress uniform, AR or M16s or M4s drawn, ready to.
I saw that.
Yeah, and they announced themselves as sheriff's department. So I agree with you that the office of sheriff is something that is very important, but it's even highly corrupted, isn't it?
Because the people, through their ignorance, they are not electing a sheriff of the people. They're electing an officer of the state, and they don't know that. People don't know that. I mean, I had a face-to-face meeting with my sheriff, and he made it clear to me, He says, yeah, theoretically and ideally, there's supposed to be a common law sheriff, but I am a sheriff for the state. My job is to enforce the statutes of the state. So isn't that funny? you vote in a county sheriff, but yet he doesn't work for you. He works for the state. That makes absolutely no sense. So I'm in the process now of preparing some notices to give to the sheriff to let him know that not everybody voted him into a position that makes him an arm of the state. I'm going to let him know that at least one of the people in his county voted him as a real sheriff for the excuse me, for the people.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he doesn't act as a sheriff for the people, he's in fact committing fraud. And I had my conversation with one of their people, and I made it very clear that all we need is just a few people to go up to the sheriff and tell him he needs to act in his proper capacity, and if he doesn't, he's committing fraud. But the truth is, the banks foreclose on people using the sheriff as a common law sheriff. People don't even know that.
Hold on one sec. We're going to take this break, and we'll get into this story on the backside of the break. Freeman, Burt, hang tight. We're going to be back with more Wide Awake News Radio. Just a few minutes, guys. Guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. We have Freeman, Burt joining us, and during the break, we picked a couple topics that we're going to talk about. One of them is mortgage foreclosure, and because we talked about that in that last segment about sheriff's office or police department coming in and evicting you. Break it all down, Burt. I mean, when people are evicted, when they're foreclosed on a mortgage that they hold. Now, assuming that the mortgage even has a clear chain of custody on the title, because there's the whole situation where most mortgages don't. The whoever's on that title, it's been changed hands 2 or 3 times. Robo signing ends up at Freddie or Fannie, but there is no clear chain of custody on that title. But assuming that everything's done so-called right, explain the whole foreclosure and eviction process and how it's woefully wrong.
Well, the thing that people don't realize is that every time you are evicted, you're in fact evicting yourself, because they need your consent in order to evict you. And the way people give consent is by not responding to all the notices they get from the bank. Okay, every time the bank sends you a notice is a notice. They're telling you, hey, this is about to happen. What do you think? Well, you're supposed to write them back and say, well, I think you're full of it. I think you need to prove this part in the paper that you just sent me. And then they have to respond. Okay? And they cannot foreclose on you as long as you continue communicating with them and asking questions. The idea is if you can come up with 1 question per month, you can stay in that house forever. Because they cannot foreclose on you unless you understand the process.
That's interesting. I've never heard anybody take that tack before. And I've talked to a lot of people that have strategically defaulted on their mortgage, or who sat in homes in some cases up to 2 years without paying any mortgage whatsoever. But it wasn't. It was because the backlog of foreclosures.
Exactly. And then here's the other part of the foreclosure that people don't realize. It's a private matter. The courts have nothing to do with it. It's totally private.
Okay, well, how does that? So how do you get from you're not responding? So what? They foreclose, and then how do you get from there to the sheriff's department showing up?
Well, because what happens is the case gets filed into a court, which is just strictly an administrative court, by the attorneys for the bank. And anyone who has gone through foreclosure will be able to testify to this, that none of the papers issued by the bank have been signed by any judge. The papers, in fact, have a make-believe signature somewhere in the document, but it's inside of a box. It's not a signature in the content of the paperwork issued by the supposed court. And all the paperwork from the court will say, whoever blah, blah, blah is foreclosing should be granted the right to close, or may close, or something along those lines. which which means, or it says something along this line, should be granted. It says their right to foreclose should be granted. So if it should be granted and it's not being granted by the judge, then who's granting it?
Yeah.
You know? And then there are some states that they call non-judicial, which means that the courts don't get involved at all in the foreclosure process, and that is done strictly by notices, and the sheriff comes and evicts you after you fail to answer the notices from whoever it is that says that they own the house. And after you acquiesce to their notices, the sheriff comes and evicts you.
What if you do respond? I mean, is that part of the plan of what you're talking about, responding with a question?
Yeah, you have to respond to everything that they're doing. And I mean, before anybody ever gets foreclosed on, they need to make sure that there was, in fact, no fraud in the transaction. People don't need to learn what fraud is. See, if I get you into a contract with me and I somehow cheat you, right, which would be fraud. But if you don't know about it, and even if you know about it but you never say it, it never happened. So you have to come up with the accusation of fraud and be able to back it up. Now, the bank...
Well, what would you even have? You wouldn't necessarily even have to have the accusation of fraud. You could just... Couldn't you just write a letter back, or have you advise anybody, or do you know anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I'm helping people by asking one very simple question. It's a very simple question.
Okay.
Ask the bank, was the note or any of the notes related to this property converted into legal tender? It's a very simple question. The banks don't like to answer that question.
Ask the question again. Say that again.
Was the note or any of the notes related to the property converted into legal tender?
And what's their answer going? Will they even answer this question? And what is the answer?
The answer is, of course, it's a definite yes. And if they answer yes, then your next question is, was your ledger increased by that amount of that legal tender on the note? And if the answer is yes, then it's obvious that you paid for the house with that note. Then the next question is, did you profit and multiply that money by depositing it into your ledger and converting it into fractional lending? The question for that, of course, is going to be yes, because that's how banks create money, which means that they cannot answer that question. Otherwise, they will admit that if you had a $100,000 loan, that means that they made at least $1 million out of that $100,000 loan.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not going to answer any of those questions. But all you need is for them to admit that they converted the note into the amount that is on the note. Because then that means that they made money off of you, and then you're paying for it again. So you're paying twice for the house, at least twice, plus interest.
Right. Have you had anybody use this successfully to date?
We're using it in several houses, and some of these properties are now being tied up for over a year.
In the Denver area?
Yeah. And the banks are not they're missing in action, let's put it that way.
Well, and the people that I've talked to across the country, I mean, from Florida to California, that have squatted, if you will, they're some cases they've been in houses for a couple years, but I do know a few people that have asked, literally just wrote a letter saying they wanted to prove a chain of custody of the title, because it's if you don't have this chain of custody, you don't have a contract, and you don't have the authority, you don't have the if you're not the title holder, then you don't have the authority to evict or foreclose or anything else. You have no business making a claim on this property.
Well, have you ever heard of the Credit River decision?
No, I haven't.
It's a classic case, and it was only one of its kind. The banks actually admitted that they were creating money out of nothing, And the judge basically said, the only one that I know that can do that is God. And he let the guy keep his house.
Was this in this? I might have heard of this. Is this in the late 30s?
This was in Minnesota. It was I think in the 70s or 80s. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. And yeah, the guy kept his house. And if you read through that case, you'll be able to understand how the whole scam worked. And it's just basically they're taking your note and they're converting it into legal tender. I mean, if you think of it logically, why would a bank want to lend you $200,000 for you to pay it back in 30 years? They're not making any money if you're paying it back in 30 years.
Yeah, they're turning it into dough right then and there and lending on that as well. We're going to be back with Freeman Burt in just a few minutes, guys. Hang tight. Charlie McGrath, your host, final segment. Freeman Burt, Gary Hendershot. We're just having a nice little conversation here, talking about the direction of the country. And you know, all of us end up at the same place with our conclusion, which is a country that we wouldn't recognize without a doubt right now. You know, Gary was talking about, you know, we're in the 1930s heading into the World War, or the Stasi-style police state of Nazi Germany. I should say the Nazi-style police state of Germany in the 40s and the late 30s. And I don't know. I don't know if it's 10 years down the road. I don't know if it's going to take that long for things to unravel, but it certainly seems to be that is the path we're on. I think we're all in agreement there. Burt, I did want to go ahead, Burt.
No, go ahead.
Well, I know we could talk about the mortgage thing some more because I think it's very fascinating. And it's going to become more of an issue, I think, going forward because, you know, we've had this, I don't know what you want to call it, this little buffer period of 4 years of people being dealt with nicely by these too big to fail banks who are holding these mortgages and not kicking people out. Some people are staying in for a couple of years. But I think we're going to see all that start to turn. I mean, it's no more Mr. Nice Government. It's no more Mr. Corporate financier who controls government. They're going to go in and start taking some of these properties, especially when we start talking more and more austerity coming. And I think we're seeing the evidence of it. One, of course, is that video that we were talking about earlier. And so I think it's important to talk about these different procedures. But it seems that the person in this country, the average person that is sitting there, has the stack and the deck so stacked against them that I mean, you know, you can't win. You can't win even if you know the law. You know what I'm saying?
Well, what we need to start. This is what I tell people that want me to help them. Okay, I ask them, do you spend more time watching TV than you do studying? Most people say yes. I'm like, unless you're willing to trade that balance of time, you know, I can't help you because you're choosing and willing and voluntarily, you want to swim in ignorance. So if you don't want to put the effort to educate yourself about your freedom, you know, you will not be able to be helped because someone will have to hold you by your hand the whole time, and there's not enough people around to hold you by the hand that know anything. You know, most of us don't know much. Most of us are struggling to learn. Like, for example, right now I'm helping someone with a marijuana issue, and it's amazing what I'm finding out. The Attorney General creates the illegal substances, and then he prosecutes you for it. How many people know that?
Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, there's a list in the U.S. Code where they have a long list of substances that are supposed to be illegal. Well, the Attorney General is the one that puts those substances on that list. And then he prosecutes you for it. Is that not a conflict of interest?
It certainly would seem to be.
Yeah. That's how it operates. And then the other point is, if I told someone the marijuana plant is not illegal, it's not illegal for anyone to grow a marijuana plant and harvest it, people would think I'm crazy. But I would have to tell them, go read the code for yourself and think of it a little bit logically. if the United States has the right to outlaw a plant, I don't care what it is, a poppy seed plant, a cocoa plant, whatever, they can outlaw corn, they can outlaw rice, they can outlaw whatever plant and starve you to death. So therefore, it's illogical for any government or body politic to have the power to outlaw food or a plant. so, so therefore, marijuana cannot be made outlawed. And then we were talking about them passing here in Colorado a new law now saying that marijuana is legal. Well, it was never illegal, so why make it legal? When you make something legal, now you're making it easy for them to come back and tax it. And I've tried explaining that to a bunch of people, and most people are just so so much in the dark that there's no way that they can get some of these points across, because we get our information from the news, from the TV, right, which is all propaganda. It's not news, it's propaganda.
It is absolutely propaganda. Back to the plant itself, marijuana. It is. Did you say it is? It's. They can't make a law against a plant.
No.
Are you just saying this, or is this some research you've done where it's like you can't?
This is in the law.
Okay.
This is in the law, in the U.S. code. I'm gonna put together a little video and a paper on it, because it's really not easy to explain, because you have to really go into the law itself, and all the parts of the law is not like neatly in one spot. It's all spread out, and they talk about all kinds of different definitions, because when they come after you for marijuana, they're accusing you of manufacturing marijuana. And most people don't even know what that word means, But if you were using from its common understanding, how could you possibly manufacture a plant? You can't. It's impossible. Nobody manufactures a plant. Now, if you take it from their definition, manufacturing means a chemical process. And you have to read through it in order to comprehend what the process is. And like I said, I'm going to try to put something together to explain it to people, because this is how the whole federal government gets a grip on everything that we do in our lives, because the federal government is the federal government of the corporation known as the United States. It's not our government. And it really boils me now when I hear people talking, oh, our government is doing this and our government is doing that. It's like, well, if it's your government, then you should be happy with it. But it's not your government unless you're one of their employees. Now a United States citizen, by their own definition, is in fact an employee, but it's one of the lowest employees on the run. They're at the bottom of the ladder. A street sweeper is above a citizen, and people don't get that. A citizen is a subject. He supports the government of the United States. He's a beast of burden. There's no honor in calling yourself an American, because an American, by their own definition, also means a subject of the United States. And these are all things that are becoming so obvious the more I keep studying this nonsense.
Well, and listen, for those of you who have not heard Burt before, he's walked the walk. He's challenged this so-called authority just about every level. My thought is, how do we change it, Burt? How do we change it to understand common law? How do we return to that? And is it going to be a matter of, a state like Idaho or Montana or Colorado, or even a county holding up? A county, a sheriff's going to say enough's enough. We're not going to follow this corporate law. We're going to revolt. We're going to rebel. We're going to secede. Whatever. How do we change this thing?
The only way we're going to change this thing is, number one, education. That's the number one thing. And then, I used to believe that for example, that the policemen, that the cops were actually knowledgeable. They're actually not. They are so ignorant about everything they do. It's pathetic. All they are is just a human body carrying a gun to force someone to do something. That's all that they are. So we have to take the sheriff or get people that know about freedom to run for sheriff. I mean, why do we allow dirtbags to run for sheriff? I mean, we need decent people to run for sheriff. And there is no qualification to be a sheriff. All you have to do is just be a man of honor, and you can run for sheriff. That's it. And once you get into the office, you can do whatever you want as the sheriff because you're the top law enforcement in the county. No brown shirts, no whatever shirts can come into your county without your permission. And if they do, you can arrest them and confiscate their weapons. I mean, with the sheriff, we can take the whole country back, one county at a time. But we need people to get off the government breast. People are so high on government milk, they can't see, the world around them.
Yeah, no doubt. Do you know any constitutional sheriffs in your I know in your county they're not, but have you spoken to any across this country?
I'm trying to connect. There's supposed to be 2 here in Colorado, and I have a girl actually working on trying to connect, Mm-hmm. And hopefully we'll be able to do that because that's what we have to do. We have to connect with the sheriffs, and then we have to force these corporate schools to start teaching the true history of the country, not all the propaganda that they're teaching in schools, And if the schools won't do it, we have to do it. We need to start teaching our own children, and putting them on the right track of freedom because it all begins with information. If you don't know that the water is 10 feet deep, and you walk into it, you're going to drown, So we have to educate ourselves, and we have to teach the people around us, I'd like to mention about the United Mini Marathon this weekend.
Yeah, do it.
If people could, I think Gary knows the details about that too. With the United We Strike.
Yep. Burt, I got a message from Karen. Burt will be part of the United We Strike weekend with a mini-thon, she's calling it, this weekend. Greece is striking. Think what a strike in solidarity would do. Gary's in too. I think Gary's in the conversation. I don't know if Gary, are you involved in the United We Strike mini marathon weekend?
Oh yeah. No,
all right.
I got 20 minutes.
All right. Well, Freeman Burt, thank you very much. I will message you tomorrow on my plans, later on tonight about my travel plans down to your location. I appreciate you coming on and hanging out with me on short notice.
10-4, bud.
All right, man. You have a good night. Gary Hendershot, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on and hanging out and doing all your fine technical wizardry. All right, guys.
I'm busy pushing buttons.
Enjoy Jeff Rentz because he is coming up next tomorrow night. Hour number 1 is going to be Eric Lovely, of course. Hour number 2, Karen doesn't know this, and this is going to get her mad at me. Hour number 2, for the first half hour, Dimcad's going to come on. He's got some stuff he wants to come on and talk about. And then we're going to have Chris Atkin of Buy Emergency Foods come on. All right, guys, you enjoy Jeff Rentz. He's coming up next. Have a good night. Peace.